My parents sat me down at the dining table, their faces carved from stone. They said loving Daniel was a betrayal of everything they believed in. I had one choice: leave him or leave their house. The ultimatum hung in the air between us like smoke. My mother wouldn't even look at me. My father's jaw was set tight, his eyes hard. 23 years of being their daughter, and it came down to this moment. Daniel wasn't the problem they claimed he was. He was kind, hardworking, and loved me completely. But he came from a different background, a different culture. That was enough for them to demand I choose. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the table. I looked at the family photos on the wall behind them. Birthday parties, holidays, graduations. All those memories felt like they belonged to someone else now. My father's words cut through the silence like a blade. If you walk out with him, don't walk back. He meant every syllable. I could see it in his eyes, hear it in the firmness of his voice. This wasn't a threat meant to scare me into obedience. This was a promise. My mother finally looked up, and for a split second, I thought I saw doubt flicker across her face. But she said nothing. She just sat there, hands folded in her lap, backing my father's decision with her silence. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound felt too loud in the quiet room. I walked to my childhood bedroom one last time and packed a single bag. Clothes, documents, a photo album I couldn't bear to leave behind. When I came back downstairs, they were still sitting at that table, waiting for me to break. I didn't. I picked up my bag, walked past my childhood photos on the wall, and stepped outside toward the man they hated for no reason other than where he came from. Daniel was waiting by his car, concern written all over his face. He didn't ask what happened. He could tell just by looking at me. We drove away from the only home I'd ever known, and I watched it disappear in the side mirror. The house got smaller and smaller until it was just a dot, then nothing at all. Daniel reached over and squeezed my hand. "We'll be okay," he said quietly. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But in that moment, all I felt was empty, like someone had reached inside my chest and pulled out everything that made me feel whole. The streets I'd grown up on blurred past the window. Every corner held a memory I'd never make again. Daniel and I moved into a cramped studio apartment across town. The walls had peeling paint, water stains on the ceiling, and a smell we couldn't quite identify. One mattress sat on the floor in the corner. A single wobbly table doubled as our desk and dining surface. This was our new beginning. Fresh start. Didn't feel fresh though. Felt desperate and small and shameful. I unpacked our few belongings while Daniel tried to fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom. We had almost no furniture, no proper kitchen, barely any money. My parents had been wealthy, comfortable. I'd grown up never wanting for anything. Now I was counting coins to buy groceries. That first night, we ate instant noodles sitting on the floor because we didn't have chairs yet. Daniel tried to make jokes, tried to lighten the mood. I appreciated the effort, but I couldn't shake the weight pressing down on my chest. I found out I was removed from the family group chat when I tried to send a message and it wouldn't go through. My cousins got wedding invitations that summer. My younger sister got a graduation celebration with the whole family there. Got silence. Complete, absolute silence. It was like I'd died, and nobody bothered to attend the funeral. I scrolled through social media and saw photos of family gatherings I wasn't invited to. Birthday dinners. Holiday celebrations. Sunday barbecues. They'd rearranged their lives to exclude me entirely. My seat at the table was gone, filled by someone else or just removed completely. I blocked most of them eventually, unable to keep torturing myself with images of the life that used to be mine. Daniel suggested I take a break from social media altogether. He was probably right. But I couldn't stop checking, hoping maybe someone would reach out. Nobody did. Through a distant cousin who still spoke to me occasionally, I learned my parents had told people I abandoned the family. They twisted the story, made my love for Daniel sound like a crime I'd committed against them. According to their version, I chose to walk away from everything they'd given me. I was ungrateful, selfish, lost. They made themselves the victims and me the villain. The whisper network spread their lies faster than I could correct them. Aunts and uncles who'd watched me grow up now looked at me like I was a stranger, someone who'd betrayed blood for no good reason. The truth didn't matter to them. My parents' version was the only one they heard, the only one they believed. I stopped trying to defend myself after a while. What was the point? They'd already decided who I was in their story. Instead of drowning in humiliation and grief, I poured all my energy into the business idea they'd always mocked me for. My online branding and consulting service. My parents had laughed when I first mentioned it during college. "That's not a real career," my father had said, dismissing it with a wave of his hand. "You need something solid, stable, respectable." But now I had nothing left to lose. No approval to seek, no expectations to meet. I started researching everything I could find about digital marketing, brand strategy, social media management. I watched free tutorials until 3 a.m, took notes until my hand cramped. Daniel worked construction during the day to pay our bills. I worked a coffee shop morning shift, then came home and built the business every spare minute I had. It was exhausting and terrifying, and the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. I juggled 2 jobs while building the business after midnight. My laptop became my closest friend. The screen's glow my constant companion in the dark. Exhaustion became my normal state of being. I'd wake up at 5, work the coffee shop from 6 to 2, come home and work on client proposals until Daniel got back around 6. We'd eat dinner together. Then I'd go back to the laptop until my eyes couldn't focus anymore. Sometimes I'd fall asleep at the wobbly table, my face pressed against the keyboard. Daniel would wake me up gently and guide me to the mattress. He never complained about the hours I was putting in, never made me feel guilty for being unavailable. He understood this business was more than just making money. It was proving something to the parents who said I'd never amount to anything without their support. My first online launch made exactly $27. 27. I'd spent weeks creating the service package, designing the website, writing the copy. I'd posted in every relevant group, reached out to everyone I could think of. And I made $27. My parents' words echoed in my head like a curse. "You're not built for business. You don't have what it takes." I sat at that wobbly table and cried for an hour straight. All the work, all the hope, all the late nights for $27. Daniel found me there when he got home from work. He didn't say everything would be okay. He didn't promise success was right around the corner. He just sat down next to me and held my hand. "Tomorrow's a new day," he said quietly. "We try again tomorrow." So that's what I did. I wiped my face, closed the laptop, and decided to try again tomorrow. A small client found real success with my strategy 3 months later. She was a local baker trying to grow her Instagram following. I helped her rebrand, create consistent content, engage with her community. Within 6 weeks, her followers tripled. Her sales doubled. She was thrilled, emotional, grateful. And she referred 2 more people to me. Small business owners like herself, people trying to make something work against the odds. For the first time, I saw a tiny crack of light breaking through the darkness. These clients paid more than $27. They paid enough that I could cut back my coffee shop hours to part-time. The business was still small, still fragile, but it was growing. Actually growing. I started to believe maybe my parents had been wrong about me. Maybe I did have what it took to build something from nothing. Month by month, the business grew. Not fast, not glamorous, but steady. My confidence grew with it. I landed bigger clients, charged higher rates, delivered results that made people want to work with me. Word-of-mouth referrals became my best source of new business. I didn't have money for fancy advertising, but I didn't need it. Happy clients told their friends who told their friends. The wobbly table got replaced with a real desk. The mattress on the floor got replaced with an actual bed frame. Small improvements that felt like massive victories. Daniel eventually quit construction to help me with operations and client management. His steady presence made everything easier. We were building something together, brick by brick. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering if my parents ever thought about me, if they ever regretted their choice. Then I'd push those thoughts away and focus on the future we were creating instead. I hit my first six-figure year. No investors, no loans, no family money. Just grit and determination and refusing to quit when things got hard. The number felt impossible when I first saw it in my accounting software. $100,000 in revenue. I stared at the screen for a solid minute, convinced there was a mistake. But there wasn't. I'd actually done it. Built a real business from scratch in less than 3 years. Daniel picked me up and spun me around the apartment when I told him. We ordered takeout from the nice restaurant we never let ourselves go to and ate it on our new couch. I thought about calling my parents, showing them what I'd accomplished without their help. But I didn't. They'd made their choice. I was making mine. That night, I slept better than I had in years, finally feeling like maybe I was worth something after all. Meanwhile, my parents' traditional business was drowning. They owned a manufacturing company that had been in the family for 30 years. Built on old methods, old relationships, old ways of thinking. Competitors were modernizing, adopting new technologies, reaching new markets. My parents refused to change. "We've always done it this way," was their answer to every suggestion, every warning. Through the distant cousin who still talked to me occasionally, I heard they were losing major contracts. Companies they'd worked with for decades were switching to competitors who offered better efficiency, better pricing, better service. My parents blamed the economy, blamed foreign competition, blamed everything except their own stubbornness. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd rejected me for choosing a different path, and now their refusal to adapt was destroying everything they'd built. I didn't feel happy about it. It was sad. Sad for what could have been different. Whispers of panic started reaching me through the grapevine. Employees were quitting my parents' company. Key staff members who'd been there for years were jumping ship before everything collapsed. My father was scrambling to find replacements but couldn't compete with the salaries other companies offered. My mother was working 16-hour days trying to keep operations running. The business that had once been their pride and joy was becoming their nightmare. They blamed everyone but themselves. The economy was bad. The workers were disloyal. The competitors were undercutting them unfairly. But everyone else could see the real problem. They'd refused to evolve, refused to listen to advice, refused to admit their methods were outdated. And now they were paying the price. I heard through my cousin that they'd taken out a second mortgage on their house to cover business debts. The comfortable life they'd lived for decades was crumbling around them. One evening, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in 3 years. I stared at it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. After 3 years of complete silence, he was calling. My hands shook as I debated whether to answer. Daniel was at the gym, so I was alone in the apartment. Just me and that ringing phone. I let it ring 4 times before I finally picked up. "Hello," my voice came out smaller than I intended. There was a pause on the other end, long enough that I almost hung up. Then I heard his voice. Older somehow, tired. "Dad." Like I wouldn't know. Like I hadn't been waiting for this call for 3 years. I didn't say anything, just waited for him to continue. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, he cleared his throat. "How have you been?" He asked how I was, how the business was doing. His tone carried something I'd never heard from him before. Humility. My father, who'd always been so confident, so certain about everything, sounded uncertain now. Almost nervous. I gave him short answers. Business is good. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. He didn't deserve easy after what he'd put me through. He asked about Daniel, which surprised me. For 3 years, he'd refused to even acknowledge Daniel's existence. Now he was asking about him like they were old friends. The conversation felt strange, uncomfortable, like we were strangers trying to remember how to talk to each other. He mentioned, almost casually, that he'd heard I was doing well, that people in the business community were talking about my company. I wondered how long he'd been keeping tabs on me while pretending I didn't exist. The hypocrisy of it made my stomach turn. He asked if I'd be willing to come by the house. Talk. In person. Every instinct told me to say no, to protect myself from more hurt. But curiosity won. I agreed to visit the following Saturday. Walking up to that house felt surreal. The same porch where I'd sat countless summer evenings. The same door I'd walked out of 3 years ago, thinking I'd never return. Nothing had changed on the outside, but everything had changed inside me. My father answered the door. He looked older, grayer, smaller somehow. The powerful man who'd delivered that ultimatum 3 years ago seemed diminished now. My mother appeared behind him, her eyes red like she'd been crying. They led me to the living room. The same family photos still hung on the walls, but I noticed they'd moved some around. Pictures of me had been relocated to less prominent spots. We sat down, the silence heavy and awkward. I waited for them to speak first. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted help. My father laid it out plainly after some awkward small talk. The company was failing. They had maybe 8 weeks before everything collapsed completely. Bankruptcy was looming. They'd lose the business, possibly the house. Everything they'd spent 30 years building was about to disappear. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. My father stared at his hands. They needed my expertise, my connections, my understanding of modern business practices. The irony was suffocating. 3 years ago, they'd told me I'd never amount to anything, that my business ideas were foolish, my path was wrong. Now they were sitting here, begging me to save them with those same ideas. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of the hurt, tired of the anger, tired of carrying this weight. I looked at them, really looked at them, and saw 2 frightened people who'd let pride destroy everything. Instead of offering advice, I reached into my bag and slid a folder across their coffee table. An acquisition proposal. My company buying theirs. I'd prepared it the night before, unable to sleep after my father's call. I'd stayed up running numbers, consulting with Daniel, weighing options. This was the solution that made sense. For me anyway. My father opened the folder, his hands trembling slightly. My mother leaned over to read it with him. I watched their faces as they absorbed what I was offering. Not a rescue, not charity, a business transaction. Their company would become part of mine. Their employees would keep their jobs. Their legacy would continue, just under new ownership. My ownership. The silence that followed was deafening. My father looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Real genuine fear. "You want to buy us out?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My father stared at the papers, reading through the terms again and again like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Shock, fear, regret, all of it playing across her face at once. They'd expected me to consult, to advise, maybe to help them restructure. They hadn't expected this. Complete acquisition. Their company absorbed into mine. Their names removed from the business they'd spent 3 decades building. "This is fair market value," I said, keeping my voice professional. "Actually, it's generous considering your current position." My father's jaw tightened. I could see him struggling with his pride, wanting to argue but knowing he had no leverage. They were weeks from bankruptcy. I was offering them a way to avoid complete ruin. My mother spoke for the first time since I'd arrived. "So we'd work for you." Her voice cracked on the last word. He nodded. "If you want to stay on. But I'd be bringing in my own leadership team." I didn't insult them. I didn't scream. I didn't throw their rejection back in their faces the way part of me wanted to. I simply said, "This is business, not family. You made that distinction 3 years ago." The words landed like stones dropping into still water. My mother flinched. My father's face went pale. They couldn't argue because it was true. They'd drawn that line, declared I was no longer their daughter. Now I was treating them exactly how they'd taught me to. As business contacts. Nothing more. My father opened his mouth to speak, closed it, then tried again. "We made mistakes." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest thing to one I'd heard from him. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "You have 1 week to review the proposal. Let me know your decision through your lawyer." I walked toward the door, feeling their eyes on my back. My mother called out, "Wait. Please." I paused but didn't turn around. Or sorry. For everything. 2 months later, the company they'd built became officially mine. The paperwork was signed in a conference room downtown, lawyers on both sides handling the technical details. My father signed first, his hand shaking slightly as he put pen to paper. 30 years of his life reduced to a signature. My mother couldn't even look at me during the signing. She kept her eyes down, dabbing at tears she tried to hide. When it was done, the lawyer declared it official. The business was transferred. I now owned everything. The building, the equipment, the contracts, the name. All of it. I thought I'd feel victorious in this moment. Triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. I'd won, but at what cost? My father stood slowly, looking at me for a long moment. What happens now? He asked quietly. I gathered my copy of the documents. Now we modernize everything. I'll be in touch about the transition plan. Professional. Distant. Exactly what they'd taught me to be. I transformed the business with a digital strategy they'd once claimed was a waste of time. New software systems replaced their outdated paper processes. Social media marketing replaced their reliance on old relationships. Efficient supply chain management replaced their expensive, slow methods. I brought in consultants to streamline operations. I invested in employee training. I updated everything from the website to the company logo. My parents watched from the sidelines as I dismantled their old way of doing things and rebuilt it all. The employees responded well to the changes. They'd been frustrated for years, knowing there were better ways to do things but never being heard. Now someone was finally listening. Revenue started climbing within the first quarter. Clients who'd left came back, impressed by the improvements. New clients signed on, attracted by our modern approach. Within 6 months, the company was profitable again. Not just surviving but actually thriving. Everything my parents said was impossible I made happen. My parents now worked under the leadership team I hired. Young, talented people who understood modern business practices. My father, who'd been CEO for 30 years, now reported to a woman 15 years younger than him. My mother, who'd run operations, now followed systems designed by my team. They walked into a building that displayed my company's branding, my mission statement, my vision. Every day they were reminded that this wasn't their company anymore. It was mine. Some employees told me my parents struggled with the transition. My father had trouble following new protocols, kept trying to do things the old way. My mother had broken down crying in her office more than once. Part of me felt bad for them. A smaller part felt like this was exactly what they deserved. Daniel thought I was being too harsh, that I should reach out to them personally. But I couldn't. Not yet. They'd made their choice 3 years ago. Now they had to live with the consequences. I didn't destroy them. I didn't humiliate them. I simply succeeded loudly and undeniably and completely on my own terms. I built the legacy they'd always wanted, just not in the way they'd imagined. Not through their methods, their connections, their approval. Through my own hard work, my own vision, my own refusal to give up when everything seemed impossible. Sometimes I drove past their house, the one I'd grown up in, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no longing for what used to be. Just acceptance. They taught me that love came with conditions, that family was about control rather than support. So I'd built a new family. Daniel and I got married quietly last spring. No big ceremony, no guest list drama. Just us and 2 friends as witnesses. We bought a house last month. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. And when I look at everything we've built together, I realize their rejection was actually a gift. It forced me to become someone I never would have been under their roof. Someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth didn't depend on their approval. Someone who built an empire from ashes and never looked back.